If you like juicy and tender ribs, then you came to the right place, because this is where we try and make the best ribs in the world. And then the big question is, who makes the best ribs? Is it Hog Country, South Carolina, or is it Texas?
Big thanks to KamadoJoe for sponsoring this episode.
Both states stand out in their phenomenal style for barbecue. They have mastered it, perfected their techniques for decades, making their barbecue the best in the world. And yet here I am in the Netherlands on a rainy day trying to make the best barbecue ribs there are. The first one from South Carolina, of course, is Rodney Scott, famous for his whole hog cookings and creating some of the best smoked pork you can get in the USA. And on the other side, we got Jerby Barbecue from Goldie's Barbecue, a celebrated barbecue restaurant with some of the best techniques and flavor profiles that we can imagine. But there's a catch, because people who know a lot about barbecue and the barbecue restaurants are gonna say Goldie's at the moment is nailing it. They're gonna win this hands down. However, we do all know that Texas is a beef state. It is famous for its cattle, its briskets, its beef ribs. Those are the elements that they score in so well. Whereas South Carolina is hog country. That is where their sweet spot is. So this is by no means a set case. This is going to be a real challenge. Of course, I selected some ribs, and these are baby back ribs. They're my personal favorite type of ribs because they have loads and loads of meat on them and they're juicy and flavorful. But before I get into preparing these ribs, I'm gonna fire up my barbecue first. I'll be using the KamadoJoe for this setup. I'm gonna put in some KamadoJoe Big Block and light it up with some embers from the fire that I've got going on the side. These embers are critical for the cooking process, because what Rodney Scott does is he has a wood fire which he lets burn down into embers and uses those embers to cook the whole hog and the ribs with. And of course, on the other hand, I'm going to try and create an offset style smoker flavor profile. And therefore I'll be using the Smoking Dad's method of recreating an offset smoker style flavor profile in your ceramic barbecue. And that's called the double indirect setup. And the way it works is you put a heat deflector at the lowest level and then another one on top of that at a higher level, followed by the grill grates, creating as much indirect heat as you possibly can have. I'm going to give the embers a little bit of time to heat up the grill, and I'm aiming for about a smoking temperature of around 120 degrees Celsius or 240 degrees Fahrenheit. By preparing the ribs for the double indirect method, I'm going to remove this membrane that sits at the back, and then I end up with a beautiful rack of ribs like this. The important part is removing the membrane so that you can get a tasty bite without biting into the membrane. It's just going to make for a more juicy, tender experience at the end of the cook. At the moment, seasoning salts are very popular in Texas. They'll use Lawry's or seasonal, and what I'm going to use is the PITMASTERX chicken seasoning. And the reason for that is because the seasoning flavors are so close together. Sprinkle from a high, get that seasoning on. Of course, I'm going to want to season the sides for aesthetic reasons. So now the Texas style ribs are ready to go on the barbecue. For the South Carolina ribs, we got a whole other story. Even though that they're the same ribs, we're going to treat them completely different. I'm going to get rid of the floppy bits first, the cartilage, the floppy meat, and then we see that membrane, we're going to leave it on this time. You see, that membrane is an important part of the cooking process with the whole hog cooking in an open fire pit. A little bit of seasoning, not too much. Flip it around, season the other side, especially on the bottom. Not too much. I'm using the PITMASTERX classic barbecue seasoning because that's the closest thing that I have to what I think Rodney Scott is using. To help with the smoke flavor, I'm going to take out a piece of burning wood, which is almost all the way burned, and put this in the barbecue underneath the heat deflectors. That's going to give me the first bit of heat, and it's going to get me that instant smoke. The Texas ribs go over the double indirect setting, and the South Carolina ribs go over the open fire pit method. I'm going to close the lid. I'm just going to wait and let the fire do its job. Now, of course, I'm going to be adding a little bit of embers from the fire every now and then because I need the airflow from the offset smoker and the little embers from the open pit method. I was preparing to start making the sauces for these ribs, and as you can see, at the moment we got a little bit too much smoke, to my opinion. I put in that log and it gave me beautiful slight smoke in the beginning of the cook, but now I'm getting too much. So I'm going to take that log out. See that? That is too much smoke. It's going to leave a not great smoke profile, and that is not what it stands for, because with offset smokers you get a really nice light smoke profile, and with the double indirect you get a more seasoned smoke profile. It also is going to mean that probably my grill is going to be running a little hot after the smoke is gone, so it's going to go faster than I want it to. You bastard. Come here. I can close the lid again. Let the ribs continue to cook. I'm also going to close the bottom vent a little bit just to help with the pace of the fire. All right, time to make the sauce. I got the recipe right here. He has a YouTube channel, so you can actually go there, and he has his recipes up there. So it's just free for the grabbing. Thank you very much, man, for sharing those recipes. Helps a lot on the other side of the pond to have the information available. I'm going to start with a cup of ketchup to set the base for his barbecue sauce. Then in goes half a cup of distilled vinegar, half a cup of apple cider vinegar, half a cup of brown sugar, half a cup of white sugar, a tablespoon of molasses. And now this is very specific. He calls out this soy sauce. This is a mushroom soy sauce, high quality soy sauce. He's very specific about this sauce, so here we go. Oh, how much do we need? A quarter cup mushroom, and I'm doing half that everything he's doing, so a quarter cup is going to be about 2 tablespoons. Follow that up by half a tablespoon of onion powder, half a tablespoon of garlic powder, and half a tablespoon of cumin seeds. All right, let's mix that up. Ooh, that's a good looking barbecue sauce. Hold on, I thought I needed to add pepper. Did I skip that? Almost forgot. Ground pepper, half a tablespoon. That looks absolutely fantastic. Now, I'm gonna put this over the stove. What happens when you heat the sauces? The crystals start working together and all of the ingredients start to get blended. With the South Carolina recipe, I'm gonna make a little bit more because it's a mopping sauce, which means I'm gonna dump most of it into the barbecue. Of course, I'm gonna put it on the ribs, but some of it's gonna fall into the barbecue. Stop calling me, Mom. Just kidding, Mom. You can call me anytime. So I'm going to start with 2 cups of distilled vinegar, 2 limes sliced. It's going to be very, very citrusy. It's going to change your world. If you never made a basting sauce like this before, it's going to change the way you think about barbecue. A teaspoon of cayenne pepper, 2 teaspoons of chili flakes, 2 teaspoons of ground pepper, and a boatload of sugar. Don't stop, wiggle, 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 wiggle. Putting in about a cup of sugar, and this is also going to go over the fire. We need this warm because you can't put cold sauce on your ribs while you're basting. It will just cool the ribs down so much you will be having troubles cooking your ribs actually. I'm going to put it on the fire, let it boil. All right, people, let's review what we've got so far. It is 2 states thinking completely different about the same thing. To make each one, they require different techniques, but also different flavor profiles and different ingredients. How will it turn out? Which one will be best? We'll find out, but now we just got a little bit of waiting to do. I need some color on my ribs. And what we've got so far is a little bit of mahogany color building up on the ribs, starting to look good, it's starting to look juicy, and we lost some of the moisture on the outside. Ooh, look at that. The direct ribs already starting to pick up a beautiful color. The mopping sauce is warm. I'm gonna set it next to my grill and I'm going to baste the ribs. First I wanna hit the side that is pointed towards the meat. I basically want a puddle inside these ribs. As you can see, the bones are already starting to pop, and that's why the South Carolina style of cooking ribs is a lot faster than the offset style. Now, of course, you can go lower in temperature, have it take a little longer if you want to, but it's just the indirect heat, the radiation heat at the same temperature that's just going to do more for your ribs in terms of speed. Is that a good thing? We'll find out. The ribs have been on for 2 hours, and the South Carolina ribs, I already basted them. You see bones popping, but now let's check on the Texas style ribs. We got a beautiful mahogany color popping up, Ribs are starting to look good. Look at that. I like the way they look, so I'm going to take them off the grill and put them on aluminum foil. This sauce has everything you need on ribs, so I'm just going to pour some of that on these ribs. There we go. Too much sauce on these ribs, just enough to get a nice layer on top of them. Flip them around, the same on the inside. A little bit of that sauce is everywhere. Let's wrap this up. There we go. Back on the barbecue. Look at that. If you're new to open fire pit cooking ribs, then this is extremely important because you don't control the temperature as much as you would with the double indirect setup. Because with the double indirect setup, the heat just goes all over. It's indirect. With the direct grilling method, you're going to get radiation heat, and that's just going to go wherever at that moment that little piece of ember is glowing the hardest. So it's always good to check. And I'm checking for doneness. And at this phase, I'm still checking for temperature. Where are we at? How far along are the ribs? You know, you got one part of the ribs that has more meat and another part where there's less meat. Currently, I'm running a little over 70 degrees Celsius, which is funny enough, very close to the ribs in aluminum foil. When the South Carolina ribs are over the fire, and then they basically start to shrink up. But then, once they become fully cooked, they start to relax again. Those are most definitely done. Ooh, just checked. Those are done too. Funny thing is that the South Carolina ribs are just 2 to 3 degrees higher than the wrapped aluminum foil ribs. And so if you compare cooking times, it's not that different. In the end, a rib's got to do what a rib's got to do. Beautiful. Will you look at that? All right, let's take a look at these grilled ribs. You can see that the South Carolina ribs have been cooking over direct heat. They got a little bit of char on them, but they look beautiful, mahogany color. Well, that's going to give us a lot of flavor. The smoked ribs, they've been cooking a lot more gentle, and they have that juicy shine look. Now, these are almost done, but I still want them to go on the barbecue and get a little bit of shine. That's going to take about 10 minutes or so. I'm going to put these back, brush them real quick, don't need much, just enough to get that beautiful shine on. These ribs are currently resting, but I'm just going to give them a little extra freaking delicious, man. You see the difference? A little bit char and dry, but still juicy on the outside. Distinct difference once again, St. Louis style, and then the Texas style. I'm just going to give the Texas style ribs a couple of minutes to relax and rest a little bit while we slice into the South Carolina style ribs and take a closer look. Ooh, ooh. Do you see what I see? We got edge to edge smoke rim. I'm going to bite into this and then we're going to find out how the South Carolina ribs stand up. That is so freaking delicious. It is freaking, it always catches me off guard. It's just so good. Oh, bro. There's a good reason why this man has multiple locations, because it's just really, really good. Look. Clean off the bone. Tear these ribs out so you can see what I'm talking about. See how juicy that is. Really, really good barbecue. Ooh, I hope Texas can stand up to this, because third rib in, let's give it a slice so we can have some comparison. That is good. Edge to edge pink. Not as distinct as the South Carolina ribs, but it's definitely there and it's going all the way in. Get a slice out of this. You see that the structure of the rib is much more homogeneous. It's easier to slice through. Looks really good. The flavor, that sauce. Let me think about this rib, because it is sticky, it is juicy, it is smoky, it has great barbecue flavor. This is going to come down to personal preference. Both recipes delivered great flavor. If you had to score it on a scale with numbers, then it would be really difficult, and probably the Texas would win, because It has more of the KCBS features that you're looking for in ribs, but these ribs, they have so much character. And it's like, if you've been cooking ribs for as long as I have, you appreciate their character. Now, of course, I need to know which you prefer. Are you from South Carolina? Are you from Texas? Which one would you rather eat? And let me know about your personal experience at their restaurants, because I haven't been there. So this is just what I took off the internet and experimenting with it with you together, figuring out which one is best. Personally, you have my answer. Of course, I have the Rodney recipe on the website as well as the Kirby barbecue recipe, but the Rodney I had to figure out myself, but the recipe is just gold.